Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. Well, we start again. Last lap. Father Robert, you had some questions you wanted to ask me, and I think both questions. I called you because I don't like to have people ask things in public, but those were both appropriate. Can't hear.
First, a Greek Orthodox was his father, and they are part of the parish, our parish, and he wants to get married to a Roman Catholic girl. Right now she's in West Virginia studying, and they want to be married as under our in our church in a Maronite wedding. Is that doable? And
Okay.
what are the requirements that we need?
When is she coming to your area?
Well, in the holidays, she'll be in our area in about a week or so.
When are they getting married?
June 5th next year.
When is she moving there?
Well, I'll know when I see her this next week.
Because you would get delegation from the local bishop in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a delegation to perform the wedding. And permission to do a mixed marriage. Marriage between a Catholic and an Orthodox. Then you need to write to our chancery to get permission for the marriage to be celebrated according to the Maronite rite.
Okay.
A rite to which neither party belongs. Okay, if you talk to the chancery, the Latin chancery, they can do it. But if they don't know what to do, ask them to call me.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So you have to deal with one chancery instead of two.
The second
Okay?
question is, she's a good friend of a person, a guy, for the past 8 years, they were studying together, and he is gay. And she would like him to be part of the wedding, in the bridesmaid side, not the maid of honor, but part of the party of the bridesmaid, to be standing with the girls. Is that?
I'm inclined to say no.
Okay.
I'm inclined to say no. It's can I find a canonical reason why he has to sit with the boys instead of the girls? No. But it's one of those things. See, we have scandal in the church. That's not scandal. It's more, what I always say is, if it raises eyebrows, if it's a source of bewilderment, like, what are you doing? Don't do it. And some people would say, you're making a mockery of this, and I would say, if he wants to be in the wedding party, sit with the boys. That's the custom.
Okay.
That's the custom. Because if she wanted her brother in the wedding, he would sit with the boys. Okay?
Okay.
That's does anybody think I'm being too mean?
No comments.
Not at all.
No. We live. I was sitting at it was a baptism of a child, a long, complicated story. But there were two young men sitting at the table with me, one to my right, one in front of me. The one in front of me was quite flamboyant. The one to my right was just a kid. So he was talking and he told me he was gay. And my aunt was sitting beside me. She said, "Do you want some wine?" And I said, "No, thank you." Then he told me he was gay, so we talked. He was a nice, very nice kid. But then, so the one in front of me told me, it was beginning of the summer. I said, "So what are you doing for the summer?" And he said, "Well, I'm working 2 jobs." Well, I said, "Well, that's good, bravo. That's, ambition." "Yes, because I'm saving up for a sex change." I looked at my aunt who was sitting next to me. I said, "Just pass the bottle." I'll take the wine now. Okay. Now, what we were talking about last time, do you have any more questions of things that have arisen that you have a question? This is our last time.
Bishop, just a question.
Surely.
We had a baptism a couple of weeks ago. There's Orthodox families that come to our church.
Yes.
And a couple of times, the Orthodox priests will come from Chicago or California, and they would perform the ceremony at our parish just because mom and dad are both Orthodox.
Right.
Now, does the registration take place in our books, or they should take care of it, or what should we do?
I would register it in yours, noting that they're Orthodox.
Okay.
Because what you try to find out 50 years from now or 30 years, which is, when they're going to get married now. Oh, hello, Vivian.
Hello.
You're the prettiest one here.
Morning.
Thank you.
Competition ain't rough, though, dear. Okay. Because 30 years from now, when they're getting married and things, that they'll say, "Oh yeah, we were baptized in that church," and just note that it's Orthodox.
All right. Thank you.
I would not issue a certificate.
Correct. True.
Don't issue a certificate.
Okay.
Okay. Ronald Abuna, do you have any questions now?
No, everything clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now, the last time, what we were talking about the last time were impediments. Now, we mentioned before that a person has the natural right to marry unless they are impeded, unless there is something that can prevent them from being married. And there can be a factor in themselves, or there can be a factor in relation to the person they're marrying that will prevent them from getting married. Okay, these are called impediments. Now, some impediments can be dispensed with, and some impediments cannot. For example, we cannot dispense the impediment of consanguinity in the direct line. A direct line of consanguinity means a mother cannot marry the son, or a father a daughter. Okay? Now, all of these things reflect values, what the church considers important. Now, when we have an impediment, when the church creates the law, you cannot marry a non-baptized person. And that's Canon 803, paragraph 1. When the church says you cannot marry a non-baptized person, it's expressing the value that you should marry a Christian. You should marry a Christian. So even if it is dispensed, it is still, the law itself is expressing a value, and it is not a sacrament even if it is dispensed. It is not a sacrament, because the sacrament would have to be 2 baptized persons. So all of these things are values. For us, you would say, no, it's just wrong for a mother to marry a son. It's wrong. Now, there has been a case where a brother was given a dispensation to marry a sister by Pope Paul VI. It was a very strange case that this couple got married and they did not know. They were adopted and did not know they were brother and sister. Okay, so, but there was one case of that, but ordinarily that would not happen. Now, let's go to Canon 807. Did you get the paper? Did you pull up the paper? It's a little bit dense, but it's useful. This book is called The Pastoral Companion. It's available through the Midwest Theological Society. Okay? It's excellent. It takes into account Eastern canon law. It doesn't have anything about De Concordia that changes, the last changes, but it's very good and it explains things. So if you need something for your library, this is very good. Okay? It's The Pastoral Companion, a canon law handbook for Catholic ministry by John Hewells. John Hewells was a priest. He's retired now from the Faculty of Canon Law at St. Paul. Now, let's go into conjugicide. Conjugicide. Who would read, please, Canon 807? 807. Peter, Deacon Peter. He's on the other end of the house here.
A person who, with the intention of celebrating marriage with a certain person, brings about the death of that person's spouse or his or her own spouse, invalidly attempts this marriage.
Okay, so if a guy wants to marry this girl, and he's married, or she's married, or it could be Anne, but if he kills his own wife, or he kills her husband, it's an invalid marriage. Now, this would be the one that the church, Father Armando, this is a good case. This would be one where the church could dispense. It could dispense, but the church wouldn't dispense because it's contrary to everybody's values that you kill somebody in order to marry another one. Okay, and I before I forget, Chorbishop Charbel, there's one thing you need to understand too, because you're a Chorbishop. You still have to listen to your mother.
I am. That's why I came to the other room now. I gave her coffee, and I'm drinking mine in the other room.
Okay, but you have to listen to your mother. That's
I
always,
have to.
no matter what. You don't get too important. Now, I
True.
didn't learn that from canon law. I learned that from my mother.
True. God bless
Okay.
you.
Now, could somebody please read paragraph 2 of Canon 807?
I'll read it.
Okay.
They also invalidly attempt marriage between themselves who have brought about the death of a spouse through mutual physical or moral cooperation.
Okay. Now, this is a little bit more tricky. It says that if two people conspire to kill a spouse of one of them, then they cannot marry. They cannot marry each other. Now, what they're trying to do is here, they're involving the crime of conjugicide in the other person, because sometimes, let's say a woman, she's married, she tells another guy, okay, well, you have him killed or something. it's just another variety of conjugicide. She is morally involved in it if she's paying him or anything like that to have her husband killed. Okay? This is so rare, we don't need to get into it too much.
But I mean, if it is known that they conspired, they would be in jail. They're not going to be.
Yeah, exactly. If they, well, moral, you could kill somebody also by just getting them to commit suicide. It's unsavory, but these things happen. And you just think, no, that would never happen. And then you hear about it, like somebody wanting to be a bridesmaid. Could we go to Canon 808? We're going to talk about consanguinity. Consanguinity, sanguine means blood. So we're talking about blood relationships, Now, could somebody please read Canon 808, paragraph 1? Father Ronald?
In the direct line of consanguinity, marriage is invalid between all ancestors and descendants. Continue.
Okay. We'll just stop there for a moment. Consanguinity in the direct line means just direct descendants, ascendants and descendants. A person cannot marry their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother. A person cannot marry their daughter, their granddaughter, etc. That's a direct line of consanguinity. It is not dispensed. Now, Father Ronald, could you just continue with 2?
In a collateral line of consanguinity, marriage is invalid up to and including the 4th degree.
Okay, now this is an interesting thing. Consanguinity, let's have to do it this way. Can you see this? Okay, you see the common ancestor at the top. It's a grandfather, and he has 2 children and their 2 children. Okay, now 4th degree means you count everybody involved except the common ancestor. Now, anybody here cannot marry each other. Collateral means side. So an uncle could not marry a niece because it's within the 4th degree. Now, we do dispense from those things. We do dispense because in Lebanon, it is not unusual for 2 first cousins to marry. What is a first cousin? The child of siblings. What is a second cousin? Their children. Okay, in the 6th degree, there's no, so their grandchildren can marry each other. Okay, in Lebanon, the first cousins do marry, but it requires a dispensation. It's not as, I don't recommend it so much, and not because of being funny, but I just do notice in certain parishes, when there are a lot of these marriages, and all of a sudden the children have autism, hearing issues, and things like that. So I would discourage it if you can. There are some families that just do it too much. You guys from Lebanon, are you more familiar with that? No, Father Armando, how about Father Robert?
Yes, I am familiar with that. Yeah, definitely. 2 first cousins marrying each other.
Yes. Ronald?
Yes, I am familiar with that. We have first cousins.
So discourage it if you can. Now, Okay. Now, the next paragraph, paragraph 3. Father Armando, do you want to read it? Of Canon 808.
Marriage is never to be permitted if there is a doubt whether the parties are related by consanguinity in any degree of the direct line or in the second degree of the collateral line.
Okay, this is why they pay canon lawyers to figure out these things. If there's any doubt whether the person is marrying his mother or his grandmother, you don't permit it. If there's any doubt whether the person is marrying his brother or sister, you don't permit it. It's rather clear. Okay, fourth, when you count degrees, when you read in the code a degree, you count everybody except the common ancestor. So if you saw I had 6 dots on the page, 1 dot doesn't count and everybody else counts. Okay? Pretty clear? Now you could have different configuration of dots. You could have 4 people and there could be that 1 dot could go on the other side. It could be the grandson of another one with that son. Still can't do it. 4th degree is not permitted. Okay, so we know what consanguinity is. Abunarano, clear? Have you had your marriage course? Have you had the marriage course yet in Catholic U?
Yes, I had it with Patrick Lagus.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Now, affinity. Affinity arises from a valid marriage. Okay, now, okay, let me, why did we mention consanguinity? Consanguinity doesn't involve anything with the marriage. It doesn't. For affinity, you have to have a marriage involved because it means that you are related to your in-laws. There are certain prohibitions in marrying your in-laws. Now, affinity can arise from a marriage that is valid, but even if it's not been consummated. Okay, believe me, these things come into, you get all these kinds of questions, even if it's not been consummated. So affinity exists between a man and all of his wife's relatives, and between the wife and all of her husband's relatives. Now, the Latin code says that a man cannot marry his wife's mother or her daughter. Let's say Joseph is married to Martha. Martha dies. Joseph cannot marry Martha's mother or her sister or her daughter in canon law, in the Latin code. The Eastern code goes even a little bit further. It says that, and I don't agree with the provision. Joseph is married to Martha. Martha's sister, Martha has a sister, Alice. Martha dies. The Eastern code does not permit Joseph from marrying Alice, which I don't think is a good idea, because sometimes women, while we would say it's kind of weird, but some women would want their children raised by their sister. Okay, that could be something, the possibility. The Eastern code does not permit it. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? Adonis, do you, is it?
Yes, but Chorbishop,
Sure.
I have a question actually. So if Joseph dies, then Martha can get married or should get married probably by the old traditions to one of Joseph's brothers, right?
You can't do that
So
in
why-
the
why-
Eastern churches.
I'm sorry.
In Eastern churches, you can't do it. Actually, there's a law against it in the Eastern churches. The Jews had it, but the Eastern Catholic Code prohibits it.
In Lebanon,
I thought it's done.
in Lebanon, there is a lot of these things.
Yes, we dispense from it. That's why I'm saying I started out by saying I don't agree with it. I think it's a bad law. Because I think it's a very good provision. I think it's beneficial when that would happen.
Yes, and Cherubel's dad died, so his uncle married his mother to raise the family too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's true. Now, okay, so it only extends to the sister-in-law, but let's just move on. But that does happen. Public propriety is Canon 8:10. Could who has a code handy? Vivian, do you have it handy? 8:10, please.
Okay. The impediment of public propriety arises from an invalid marriage after which the couple have lived together, from notorious or public concubinage, from the cohabitation of a couple who are bound to the form of marriage celebration prescribed by law but have attempted marriage before a civil official or a non-Catholic minister.
Okay, thank you. What this is talking about here is it's like affinity. It's like affinity, it deals with in-laws. But this is dealing with an invalid marriage. Let's say the couple lived together for 10 years. Okay? Well, the church is saying we don't just ignore that relationship. We just don't ignore that. So if it was an invalid marriage and they break up and then the man wants to marry his partner's daughter, it's invalid. It's invalid. Okay, this is called public propriety. It's like affinity, except that it's dealing with an invalid marriage at the core of everything. Lastly is spiritual relationship. Who would like to read that? Father Ronald?
Which one?
8:11.
From baptism, there arises spiritual relationship between a sponsor and the baptized person and the parents of the same that invalidates marriage.
And continue, if you would.
If a baptism is related under condition, a spiritual relationship does not arise unless the same sponsor was employed for the second ceremony.
In other words, they're saying, don't do it again. Now, what this means is that there is a relationship between the godfather and the person baptized and the parents of the person baptized. We consider that to be a spiritual relationship. This does not exist in the Latin code. Okay? So, if you have a couple and one of the parties is not baptized, they want to study to be baptized and all that. Don't let the fiance act as the sponsor. Okay, one last impediment, and then you're freed from this for the rest of your life. I have to live with it forever. Who has a code? Father Robert, could you please read Canon 8:12?
Those who are legally related by reason of adoption cannot validly marry each other if their relationship is in direct line or in the second degree of the collateral line.
Okay, now, if two people are adopted, okay, if a boy is adopted into a family, Okay, he cannot marry his sister or his adoptive mother. Because the church is again saying it's a value. If we look at this and you hear it happens, it falls under that category of just plain creepy. Okay, but if you want a little tidbit of information, for those of you who are American or know American history, if you recall, there was a young couple in the booth, the booth at the theater with Lincoln and Mary Lincoln. When they were killed, there was a captain and a young girl. They accompanied the Lincolns to the play that evening when Lincoln was assassinated. There was a boy, a captain, and a girl. They were engaged to be married, and they were brother and sister through adoption. And I found this out because I was in Germany. The man died in a house for the criminally insane. And I found out why he was in a prison for the criminally insane. He had murdered that girl. He had murdered the wife. So there's some strange things in life. Now, canonical form. What do impediments do? What do impediments do? Anybody just, after all you've heard, simply what do? They disqualify you from being able to marry. You're not capable of marrying in those 12 or 13 cases we gave you. 13. Can't do it. Okay. Marriage form indicates that you need to be married in a certain way. We as a church say, this is what you must do in order to marry. Now, so that's called the canonical form of marriage. What must you do to marry? Now, in the Latin church, I'm going to give you both sides. Canonical form, and it's all in, was it before or after? Let's see. One moment. It's around 828. If you go to Canon 828, Vivian would read that. Canon 828.
Sorry.
No problem. Take your time.
Only those marriages are valid that are celebrated with a sacred rite in the presence of the local hierarch, local pastor, or a priest who has been given the faculty of blessing the marriage by either of them, and at least 2 witnesses, according, however, to the prescripts of the following canons, without prejudice to the exceptions referred to in Canons 832 and 834.
See, these are what I do all evening is figure out these things and write about them. Enormous long books. Could you read paragraph 2 also, Vivian?
Okay. The very intervention of a priest who assists and blesses is regarded as a sacred rite for the present purpose.
Okay. Now, we're not going to read it, but I'm going to read you just from the Latin Church, which is Canon 1108. So if your code just put CIC 1108, in the Latin Church, canonical form, the way you need to get married. That's what canonical form is. The way you need to get married requires the presence of an official person. There has to be somebody there representing the church. Who is that representative of the church? Now, that person has to ask for and receive consent from the parties. Okay, and I mentioned this to you before. If you have an Orthodox with you, you can't tell the Orthodox, well, you ask for the consent from your person, and I'll ask for the consent from my person. Because according to Catholic law, you would not have received consent from both parties. Okay? Now, you have to have an official person. In the Latin Church, the official person is the local bishop, the pastor, or a priest or deacon delegated by one of them. Local hierarchy, the bishop, the proper bishop, the proper pastor, or a priest or deacon delegated by one of them. The Latin code goes even further. The Latin code says that the Conference of Bishops, with the permission of Rome, can allow for lay persons to act as the witness, the official witness and the official representative in the church, a lay person. So it goes a long way. The Eastern Catholic Church is much more restricted. It has to be the pastor, the local hierarch, or a priest delegated by either one of them. Now, because the Eastern Code requires, and it's Eastern tradition, that there be a sacred rite, which is the presence of a priest and the blessing of a priest on the couple. Okay, they require a sacred rite. Now, here's something I'm going to say to you, and I know I'm going to get a lot of people disagreeing because it is completely contrary to conventional wisdom, but I'm quite sure of it. Okay? The priest is not the minister of the marriage in the Eastern churches. This thing about the sacred rite evolved into a qualification that the priest is the sacred minister. But I'll tell you why I think that. Okay? Father Ronald, I'm sure you've heard opposite of that, right?
Yes, I've heard the canonists, they said that they are in the Eastern Catholic Church, the minister of the sacrament is the priest only. Yes. I've heard this from others.
Yes, and they're wonderful people and may they live long and happy lives, but they're wrong. Okay? Because, well, first of all, the law doesn't say that. And if the priest is the minister of the marriage, if you dispense from form and there's no priest, okay? If you dispense from form and there's no priest, you don't have a minister of the marriage. If it's, there can be also a marriage that can take place. Let's say that a couple is in a situation where they're in danger of death, you can't find a priest. Or they're in a situation where they don't expect a priest to be available for the next 30 days. They don't expect. In the foreseen future, there's not going to be a priest. The couple, in the presence of two witnesses, can marry each other. Okay, they should then go and get the blessing of the priest. Okay, now some people would say, well, there, he was a minister. But my point is, between the time they got the blessing of the priest and they originally got married, was that a marriage? Was it a valid marriage? There was no priest involved. Am I losing you entirely? Or is this too fine a point? Vivian.
So I'm not sure if you're saying if they have no priest available, but then they can, in the presence of two witnesses, can affect a marriage,
Yes,
but then it is a valid marriage,
yes.
provided, well, I guess it's a valid marriage and will
In the
later be
presence of two
served.
witnesses.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, and,
Then they should go and get their marriage blessed.
okay, got it.
How long do they have before they bless it?
There's no period because we don't know when the priest would be available.
So they could go for 2 years before they bless it.
It could be in a situation where it's not, yes, where there's no priest. Amazon. In the Amazon, that was that whole conference that there may not be a priest around a community for 2 years. People have the natural right to marry. But what I'm saying, Father Robert, they're married before that blessing of the priest occurs.
Okay.
Do you understand? They are married before that blessing occurs.
Well, following that train of thought, then the church is putting an extra law on these, the right to marry, and now the church is coming and putting an extra law on it, is that you have the right to marry, but now I'm enforcing it in front. You have the right to marry, natural marriage, but now I'm getting involved and I'm saying, I recognize your marriage only if it's in front of a priest. But if the priest doesn't exist, is not there, and you can have access to one, then you have my blessing to be married in front of two witnesses.
Right.
So, I mean, I see, yeah, I mean, this is my comment. Another thing, I think you're approaching this more from a canonical point of view rather than either liturgical or a theological point of view.
Yes, but I agree with you. And you're absolutely, that's very astute. That's what I'm doing. You see, because that's what I'm supposed to do. This is about a contract. We're not talking about the theology of marriage or anything. We're talking about the blessing or what it takes to do a real marriage, what's required. And even in the catechism, I'm writing an article on this now. That's why you're hearing about it. It's on the top of my brain. In the catechism, they put in the 1992 version that the minister of the marriage through crowning was the priest. That was in the 1992 version of the catechism. You may not be aware of this, but the catechism was revised in 1997. That paragraph was changed. It no longer uses the word minister of the marriage. And Father Armando, you're not going to believe this. The only citations it gives are 2 canons. No theological perspective, just 2 canons. So I'm saying that marriage arises through the consent of 2 adults who are capable of giving that consent. The church blesses that. The church blesses that consent. That's a requirement of the church. But to say that does not mean that the priest is the minister of the consent. The church is saying this is the requirements to get married. In the Ethiopian church, there's another addition. There's another element to canonical form. That is receiving the Eucharist. They both must drink from the same cup. Now, they do not have in the church, in the Ethiopian church, dispensations for mixed religion, nor do they give communion to somebody who's not a Catholic. Therefore, an Ethiopian Catholic can marry only an Ethiopian Catholic. You're going to run into that in Washington a little bit. Okay.
So may I make one more comment?
Sure.
Last time you argued that the state should be out of the marriage business.
Yes.
And again, following that train of thought that you're presenting, it seems like now we're saying, in a sense, the church should be out of the
No.
business.
No.
Again, when we say, and if in extreme circumstances you need just a couple and two witnesses, so what's stopping that from becoming the norm? Is that just two adults with two witnesses, then they marry, and then the church should be out of the marriage business?
No, I think the church, the tradition is that we do, that's a very ancient tradition from the 8th century, that the church blesses this union. But the church also has to deal with the reality that marriage is a natural right. And if the priest is unavailable, you have to be able to get married. Father Ronald.
Chorbishop, the Canon 828, paragraph 2 states that the right which is considered a sacred right is the intervention of a priest. So can I say that when a marriage done without a priest is non-sacramental marriage until the priest will bless it?
I don't know that. Here's what here's where it would come into a place. This is a canon lawyer talk. Now, let's say the priest didn't bless the marriage. The Pope can dissolve a non-sacramental marriage, correct? Could he dissolve it if they were both baptized?
No.
Then it's sacramental. Okay, this sounds weird. This sounds very, very weird. But this is, I'm saying the sacred rite is part of marriage for us. That is Easter. But to say that the minister of the sacrament is the priest carries it way too far. I'll give you another example, Father Armando. As you know, okay, if you look at Canon 835, would you read it?
Dispensation from the form for the celebration of marriage, from the celebration of marriage required by law, is reserved to the apostolic see or the patriarch, who will not grant it except for a most grave cause.
Okay, now that's what it's saying. It says this blessing of the priest cannot be dispensed from except for a very grave cause, and only by the apostolic see. The nuncios have permission to represent the see, or the patriarchs, for a most grave cause. So they're saying it's very, very important. Here's what I'm saying. Let's go to, I want to, if you excuse me, okay. Father Armando, could you read Canon 817? I'll put you to work. Both paragraphs.
815?
817.
817. Matrimonial consent is an act of the will by which a man and woman, through an irrevocable covenant, mutually give and accept each other in order to establish marriage.
Continue, please.
No human power can replace this matrimonial consent.
Interesting. Interesting. You can dispense for a most grave reason the necessity, the involvement of a priest, correct? You just read that, 834. You can dispense from canonical form, 835.
Yes.
Okay. You cannot dispense from consent. Nothing can replace consent. If there is no consent, there's no marriage.
But then that presents a problem.
Okay.
In the betrothal ceremony, the couple exchange consent in front of a priest.
Yes.
And some argue that in the crowning ceremony, when the priest, well, first of all, there's no exchange of vows in the Maronite Church. and also when the couple give their consent, some liturgists argue there was an addition to the liturgical celebration, to the crowning ceremony. Now, during the crowning ceremony, it's the priest who puts the rings on the couple. Now,
Yes.
they don't exchange the rings themselves,
Right.
even though we do see some priests doing it, but it is the priest who does it, and also it's the priest who crowns them. So from the liturgical action of the crowning ceremony, it's saying it's the priest who's conferring the sacrament. But following this 817 and what you're presenting, if you have a betrothal ceremony, the couple is already married because there's consent in front of a priest.
Yes, but see, the priest is not at the betrothal ceremony blessing them to be married.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I understand that.
Yeah, see, I'm saying that what we don't want to see, what I'm trying to get at, and I'm probably doing it poorly, the sacred rite, which you described, the crowning. Okay, the sacred rite is required for validity in the Eastern churches. Okay, the sacred rite, the crowning. However, it's not the priest conferring the sacrament, because if you don't have, you can dispense from the presence of a priest and they're still married. So it can't, if there's no minister, they're not married. Ronald, what do you think?
We have different ideas, different opinions on this.
Well, tell me what you're thinking.
I believe without a priest.
Thank you.
I've heard it from several canonists. I told you before, but
yes.
without priest, without a minister in the Eastern Maronite Church, the marriage is invalid.
Well, then how do you say? Okay, let me just do it this way. Okay.
If they did all the preparations and at the time of marriage the priest is not available, I don't know, maybe in this case the church maybe accept it.
Well, if they accept it once, they have to accept it. Could you read Canon 838 paragraph or 832 paragraph 1? This is canon lawyers teasing you.
If one cannot have present or have access to a priest who is competent according to the norm of law without grave inconvenience, those intending to celebrate a true marriage can validly and licitly celebrate it before witnesses alone, in danger of death and outside of the, yeah.
Continue.
Okay, outside the danger of death, as long as it is prudently foreseen that such circumstances will continue for a month.
Okay, so you heard that's the extraordinary form of marriage. Then we have a marriage that it's dispensed so they could go get married by Protestants where there's no priest. What I'm trying to get at is the sacred rite is important, but if you say the priest is the minister, you're having marriages with no minister. Who's the agent?
But,
yes, Dennis.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little confused, but I mean, I know, but I thought
I'm just.
Priest, I thought marriage is a sacrament, correct? Marriage is can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, marriage is a sacrament.
Yes.
And the priest only ministers the sacraments.
No, say it right. Say it correctly. Only priest administer sacraments?
In the Eastern Church.
Anywhere.
No, only priest.
Only
well,
priest?
Anyway, the sacraments are through the priest, right?
Always?
Well, yeah, I thought always, yeah.
Who
But
can
that's what's
baptize?
I'm just kind of confused with the
Can
natural
Vivian
law.
baptize?
I'm sorry.
Can Vivian baptize?
Yes, we can baptize in the certain circumstances, emergency circumstances.
And
Well,
is
there's
it
no
a
priest or
sacrament?
no way. Hmm?
And is it a sacrament?
Yeah, it's a sacrament, correct. So I just wonder, like the natural law, does a natural, I don't know much about the natural law, a little bit, I'm learning more and more, but the natural law, does that supersede the church, the institution, sacrament, all the?
No. I'm not saying, I'm not dismissing the importance of the sacred rite at all.
Right.
What I'm saying is that to logically say, because of the necessity of a sacred rite, that the priest is the minister of the sacrament, that's a leap I don't want to take. That's a leap I don't want to take. I want to say that the consent is absolutely necessary, because that's the only thing you can't eliminate. Well, I always do this with students. I always manage eventually to say, yeah, he's stupid. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's okay. It's okay. Any more questions? We can move from that. We don't. And I like Father Armando. Yes.
During the, let's say there is a marriage set for a certain date. A night before the marriage, the priest got sick or somehow, and they can't do anything. I mean, what happens then?
30 days. The requirement is not the priest isn't in the room at the moment. The requirement is that they don't expect a priest to be available for 30 days.
But they can continue with the marriage?
No, you have to, I mean, what question that he's not there that day and nobody's going to be around for 30 days?
Well, let's suppose there is a marriage June 5th.
Okay.
And on June 5th in the morning, the priest becomes sick, is taken to the hospital. He cannot perform the marriage. All the invitees, everybody is there. What happens?
Well, you have to have a priest. You have to have a priest, because the situation they're talking about is it has to last for 30 days. Not just that he's not there then. So so Father Ronald, I'm going to be writing an article about this. And if I get fired from Catholic U, you'll know why. Let me put it another way, and then we can just put this aside. Couples can marry without a priest. Couples can give consent without a priest. We saw that in different situations. A priest cannot marry a couple that does not give consent. Any more questions?
Yes, one more.
Sure.
And
Two more. I have one too.
Okay.
Then cohabitation. So we should treat the cohabitated couple as living together as married.
No, because you notice it says that they have to enter into who intend to live in a true marriage, and there must not be a priest available for 30 days. He can't be available. So
in that case, then the church is being charitable, because it's saying it's a natural right for these people to be married. If I couldn't provide a priest, it's my mistake and not theirs, so I'm going to allow them to be married even though I'm not present. The church is being charitable because the church and somehow is not providing enough priests to its faithful. So it's like a big it's like you go into a restaurant and then you have a lot of customers, but you only have a couple of waiters, and then the customers have to get up and go serve themselves. A similar situation that there's not enough priests to confer this to go for
that's a good situation. That's good for that situation. But if that's the case, that's okay. But then how do you account for Canon 835, where the church gives permission in a most grave reason for them to go marry without a priest.
As I said, the church is being charitable because it's not providing them.
No, there are priests available for them. This is where they don't want a priest.
Then ask the Catholic lawyers to put that in. I don't know.
No, but what I did like with your opinion, Father Armando, you said that I am approaching it from a canonical position, and I am. Theologically, there's a lot more to this, but canonically, theologically, with regard to consent, because I can't see, you can't marry parties that don't consent.
Yeah, you don't baptize somebody who doesn't give you consent, doesn't want to be baptized.
You have to have the consent.
Sure.
And their parents can't give it for them. The church can't dispense from giving consent. The church can dispense from having a priest. Yes, Vivian.
So I want to address both Father Armando's comments and this whole notion of living together, cohabitating versus making a decision to marry with two witnesses. A marriage to be valid has those three components: that it be forever, that it be exclusive, and that it accept children. And so just living together doesn't necessarily indicate that this couple has fulfilled those three requirements to make this a sacramental or at least a valid marriage. And so how do you address that?
I would say that sometimes the parties who are cohabiting today are making an intentional decision not to marry.
Correct.
They're not making the commitment. You see, I'm not trying to say, well, let's just let them marry and that's a marriage. No, I'm saying that they're making a decision not to be married.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Father Ronald, did I manage to convince you at all?
Yeah, after observing all the requirements of validity, and this marriage can be happen. So a lot of requirements for validity, and there is no any impediments to stop this marriage. So we should do the whole investigation before go to this marriage.
Yes. Well, see, you know, again, we're not getting into consent, but a couple that, a woman that married 4 times, and now she's just converted and she wants to get married. Well, you're going to say, okay, I believe you, but your past behavior would be indicative of another kind of an attitude. Okay? This is not the primary thing, because being the minister of a sacrament, that's a technicality. I'm not arguing against a sacred rite. I'm saying even in the sacred rite, I don't think what is happening is, I don't think the priest is conferring the sacrament. I think he's blessing the consent. Yes, Abuna.
Going back to cohabitation, doesn't cohabitation become commonwealth marriage after a while?
Depends on the law of the state.
But it exists.
In some states.
Okay, in one state, it exists in one state. So in
Yes.
the sense that,
But it's not our marriage.
But and that I understand, but in that state, in that state, we have to consider eventually as a valid marriage.
No.
So what does a commonwealth marriage mean?
No, but a common law marriages, they didn't follow, they weren't dispensed from form. They didn't express consent in front of 2 witnesses. No, that's nothing. That is not even an invalid marriage. I would say that does not give the appearance of marriage even. 2 couples, a couple that's married at the Elvis Presley chapel in Vegas, don't come back and say they want a convalidation. No, they want to get married, because that has no image of real marriage for Catholics. I would say what you're saying is, you're arguing my point about that state issues. let the state do whatever they want in recognizing a civil law of marriage. I don't recognize that. That's their business. And if they came to us, I would marry them. I would do a marriage because they're not married yet.
So if somebody was in a Commonwealth marriage, then they want to marry somebody else. Let's say they left that person. So do we treat it as that we're never married? I mean, how do we approach it from a church point of view?
Yes.
So if the man lived with a woman for 25 years and then decides to marry somebody else,
Yes.
as if he,
As long as he is not marrying, that's what all this public propriety is all about. As long as he, on candidate 10, as long as he's not marrying her daughter. Yeah, it's we again, we don't consider that anything.
okay, good to know. Thank you.
Okay. And are we done? We are done. We're beyond our time. I'm cutting into your lunch hour. Father Armando, I'm deeply grateful. First of all, I want to compliment you. This guy is excellent and efficient.
Man,
Are you sure you're Lebanese?
German.
100% Lebanese.
100% Lebanese. He's the most efficient guy. He gets things done in a clear manner. And he made this available for me. I just enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope that everybody got something out of it.
We did lots. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much,
Yep.
both of you.
God
Well,
bless
Bishop, thank you for the compliment, but I think the compliment goes to you. I mean, you're a very good teacher, and your presence, your character makes this class enjoyable. So thank you for your time and your wisdom, even though sometimes I don't agree with you, but you're a kind of lawyer and I'm not. So
Oh, no, exactly. No.
The way you present the material, your smile, your character, I mean, it's all wonderful. So thank you for your time and for wonderful sessions.
And you're going to be happy that I also got, because you're such a good guy, I got the announcement about the year of Sarouj in the Maronite Voice for this edition.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So it's going to be in this edition.
Yeah.
Yes, last night I squeezed it in. And it will be, you'll have it in the Maronite Voice. You'll also have the link.
And Father John will be waiting for the sequel.
Oh, well, anytime you want me to help with something, maybe we can get a specific topic.
Sure,
Maybe,
that would be great.
Maybe parish life or something like that. Or
Yeah, pastoral care.
Pastoral care. Anything you want, I'm here. But then when I'm getting old and you have this young guy, he's better looking than me. Father Ronald's coming up and he can teach us.
No, you cannot be replaced. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
God bless you, Monsignor.
Merry
Thanks.
Christmas, everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Monsignor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless you.
Bye-bye now.